lending your expertise to our panel today. And I like the simplest questions. They tend to be the ones that give you the most freedom to work. And I'll start with Trevor, since you're closest to me. What question, when people figure out what you do for a living, what question is the one that you are asked most frequently?
Yeah, I think that would probably be pretty easy. That would be how you raise a Series A round from venture capitalists. I'm not giving the answer here, but I'll just...
Okay, fair enough.
So, well, thanks for having me. I'll take the second question is what people ask after that question that they asked Trevor, which is, what do I do now? And, I'll just give the brief answer that I tell them is persistence. This is a startup medical device companies in the manic, depressive world, and it's just persistence. So you can get 1,000 no's, and you have to get up and just shake it off, because all you need is one yes. So Churchill said, success is the ability to go from failure to failure without any loss of enthusiasm. So I really live by that.
Okay.
I'm also asked how do you raise money, but just so I'm not redundant, I'm sometimes asked, what are some hot therapeutic areas? What's interesting to you?
Okay. When we spoke beforehand, Danny, you said something about how founders sometimes fail to look past Series A rounds. Would you elaborate?
Yeah, I hear from entrepreneurs that they don't like the idea of going to venture capitalists because venture capitalists are cheap, so they have to sell a big chunk of their company on day one, that it's better to go to angel investors. And my view is that, at least in the world that I play, where it takes 510K is $30 million, a P&A is $80 million, you can't fund that with angel money. And then if you can raise the money from VCs, if you do take angel money, I wouldn't overreach on valuation expectations on day one, because if you start out with a really high valuation on day one, it makes it difficult to raise a Series B and a Series C. So, there's so many things I can say about having a long-term view when you raise money. Having a deep pocket on day one, I think, is nice. It really mitigates your financing risk. Thinking about the brand of the VC that you partner with is important, because the VC does a lot of heavy lifting. He makes introductions for you on the Series B and the Series C. He has a portfolio of companies that's always interacting with the strategics. So you can rely on him to open doors for you, or open doors for you. So, just don't take the best financial deal that comes along.
So you have a unique advantage here to get free counsel from the smartest guys in this topic. I have Suzanne in the back of the mic. Is anyone here currently looking for Series A financing? Does what Danny just said resonate with you?
Scares me to death.
Okay. So by all means, if you have questions at any time, or you'd like to chime in with what they're saying, please raise your hand. Suzanne will come to you. On a related note, thinking about a round A team, the early team, do you find it best to have the founding team be one set of individuals, and then when you go to commercialization, do you often find that maybe there needs to be a shift in talent? Next part, you.
Sure, and I guess the question always comes up is, does the founding team have a different set of skills needed than a commercialization team? So there's different parts of, there's different stages of development of a company and different needs. And usually there's a difference in skill set, and somebody who can get up every morning and go face all the trials and tribulations of getting a company from an idea to into our first demand use is that a lot of times in the first meetings with venture capitalists in the last few, maybe Trevor has asked this question before, but I've been asked it many times. So what are your plans with the company? You know, they ask it in a very, very mild manner, but usually the good answer is, you know, I plan to do what's best for the company. So you can get but knowing that, you know, this is going to be an issue that comes up.
You know, I'll take the bait on that one too. You know, in some ways, I'm probably the least qualified to be on a panel of esteemed entrepreneurs. Danny and Scott have done a lot more of the entrepreneurial stuff than I have, but I've had the good fortune to work with a number of great entrepreneurs. And yeah, in terms of thinking about the team, I mean, one misconception I think entrepreneurs have often is that there's a VC sort of automatic desire to change things and change out management and so forth. You know, sitting on the VC side, it's really the last thing you want to do. It's as a board member, chair, whatever, major investor, changing out CEO can be a disaster, and more often than not, it's very, very hard to do. So certainly, if you've got someone like a Jeff Bezos as the founder who can take it the whole way and has the skill set and desire to do that, you know, great. You know, that's absolutely fantastic. As Scott said, though, the reality is that oftentimes just the skill set and the experience and sometimes the desire is just not there. And the best situations, and this does happen, is just an organic decision amongst the investors and the founders to make that change. It doesn't always happen, but that's the best case.
Maybe actually, Danny, do you, how far do you usually take your startups?
So my model's a little bit different. I'll spend a year or two trying to make an idea and get it funded, but I do not plan to be the CEO long term. So I'm the initial CEO, but I tell the CEOs from the get-go that I'm looking to hire and I'm looking for your help to recruit a star CEO. And then I'm thrilled to hand the baton to the CEO, and then I'll serve on the board. Well, I'm the CEO from time to time, but I'm looking for someone who can run circles around me. And then in terms of the ideal spec, I agree that a sales and marketing person probably is not the ideal person from, you know, for a product development stage company or even a clinical trial stage company. That said, decisions that you make very early on have implications for your ability to market and sell in the future. The design specs, the data you collect in the clinicals, the political process. I mean, it takes years to get a CPT code and coverage policies, and you need to lay the groundwork early on, building rapport with the doctors who are going to be your champions at the AMA. So, I mean, I don't really view this as an early stage guy versus a later stage guy. I mean, my ideal CEO is someone who has early in their career a technical background, an engineering role. They were an R&D person, but then they've transitioned to a sales and marketing person later. And I would say, you know, my deal is I've had the best luck with those sorts of people.
I'm really intrigued about how, you know, you state up front, look, I'm not your long-term CEO. I'm intrigued to know how early in, ideally, is it for you to identify the person who you'll hand it on? Do you want him or her alongside you from day two doing a secondary role until you step down? Or is it wait until I've done the work and now get working time to recruit them?
Well, in an ideal world, on day one, you get a star working alongside you. But the reality is you're not going to get a star to quit their job and work for you when you don't have any money. So it takes me a good year or so to make the story where I have, you know, the patent landscape mapped out, the reimbursement patent mapped out, the regulatory patent mapped out. I ideally have a term sheet in place, so when I go after the CEO, I say, look, it's an almost funded deal, then it's far less risky to recruit that star.
Interesting. Any comments? We're all continuing. Okay. I'll tell you, as leader of the medical devices group, I get a lot of questions that I don't publish, and a lot of questions on the side because this group is so large. Joe, surely you know someone who will invest in my concept. And of course, it's not that easy. It's very difficult to look at a sentence or two and then say, yeah, you should talk to Trevor. He's got a lot of money. Any comment?
property and regulatory path reimbursement and so forth. And I do spend a lot of time on those. I think over the year, I mean, there's a couple of things. Personally, it's areas that you like. I grew up in cardiology and cardiac rhythm management, pacemakers and defibrillators, so I naturally am drawn to that and love that industry. So some of it's just personal, what you like. But I think a lot of investors are like that. Angel investors will tend to have areas that they're drawn to, so I think you have to be sensitive to that, and ideas that may be terrific, but they just don't fit with that person, their desires. I think one thing I've become more and more sensitive about is in the diligence, when we're talking with docs and talking with key opinion leaders, it's still an incredibly important part of due diligence. That when you're talking with those folks, that it's an intuitive, positive response to the concept. So they get it. It's not a hard sell to convince them why this might be helpful in their practice or in their surgery or whatever. And why that's important is not just in the diligence you want to get something positive, but play it forward that when the company's out there recruiting patients or recruiting docs to be part of the trial, and then when they're commercial, and also when you're trying to raise other money down the road, you want that diligence exercise to be interesting. So I'm very sensitive to that. If it's too much of a sell in terms of convincing the physician that this is something they might really need, then that's going to be a challenge all the way through the company's life. Sometimes those get through, and those are the big changes, but you've got to recognize those are going to be difficult. So I think that's one thing that I need to focus.
Yeah, and I'll pick up on that also. Is there any idea that you start with you're stuck with, and any questions that start out hard to answer are going to be hard to answer, the entire way through. So, like Trevor was saying, it has to be intuitive, and it has to, you have to be able to answer the top questions of reimbursement, regulatory, and market and intellectual property, and answer those questions, just knock them out of the park from day one. And so, assuming that all of that ideas meet those criteria, the main question I ask is this meaningful? Will this be meaningful? If we can make this work, is this a big product? Is this an obvious, big market change? So, last time I done was LT, and the question was, is it meaningful if you can non-invasively remove fat from someone's body? That was not a difficult question to answer. So taking on some technical risk to meet those, to meet that answer of, is this a big, meaningful idea?
I'll just add on that, because Zeltic's a great example. That when we're doing the due diligence, Scott founded the company, we backed him in Fraser. When you're doing the due diligence with docs, it was using coal, delivered in a very special way to remove the fat. And it was actually, we got quite a good reaction from docs when you described that. It was like, oh yeah, why didn't I think of that kind of reaction? Which was really nice, because it just speaks to when you're actually commercializing, it's not going to be hard. Some people look at it, it's going to be a pull, not a push.
Scott, define big idea. That is, our mutual friend Tom Clement in the audience, has what I think is a very big idea, but the market size is not colossal. Do you make a distinction like how much money can I make, or is it, that's a really good idea for an unfilled need that may not be huge, but it's low risk? Can you talk us through that?
I look at it in terms of realistically reaching a sales goal of, of over $100 million in 5 years, let's say. Something in terms of that you can really get to major sales.
Let me ask the group, is there anyone here with an idea that you don't project 5 years out, it's $100 million, maybe it's 50, and you feel pretty darn good about that? Do you have any less than $100 million ideas in the room? I'm asking because, and while no one raised their hand, for the benefit of those who may read this transcript or watch a video, what about the guy who has the $10 million idea, the $20 million idea? Where
one way to exit on an idea for investors or founders to make money on an idea like that is to sell to a bigger company. And bigger companies aren't interested in $10 million ideas unless they fill some specific niche that you're not going to know factoring advance. I mean, it's just too hard to turn that into investment.
Trevor, are you in fact in violent agreement?
Actually, I'll take a contrary position. I'm not in violent agreement. I think there are some situations where, with a small amount of money, you can build a product line and find a home for it and make some money. I would do it with a high level of caution that you've already identified that this fits in perfectly in CareFusion's. I'm just making this up, but in CareFusion's particular product line, and there's some really good insights that you have that make that fit work. Versus it's just a project you want to do because you like it and you're sort of giving a pass on the market size. So I do agree market size is incredibly important. There are some exceptions, but you better really know what you're doing and not be fooling yourself.
So if you are looking at something small, you have that really serious end game. I've already identified the guy who's good at this, integrated into that. I've already got it all planned.
Yeah.
So I'll assume then that none of you here, and I know I'm speaking for the group as well, an idea that somebody pitches you for $10 million beyond potentially, I know the guy, love him, friends and family, help him out, here's a few thousand, love the guy. That's about the extent of the interest, and that's all that person can reasonably expect, friends and family, and beyond that. Yes, about a laptop. Okay. It's sobering because I personally, when I get these questions, I want to be as helpful as I can, and a lot of them are at the dot stage, and I don't want to just say, hey, sorry, man, you're out of luck.
I think actually that is being helpful.
Yeah.
You don't want someone to 6-7 years of the life of a project that's not going to go anywhere. He's got to attract people to his team. Well, the team numbers are going to care about how big the market is. He's got to attract money. The VCs are going to care about how big the market is. He's got to attract strategic interest at the end of the day. They care about the market size. So,
One of my,
it's not like there's a lack of large market opportunities. They're just steer them in another direction.
one of my favorite books of all time is a book called Influence to the Psychology of Persuasion by Moody, and he talks about ways to influence people. One of them being social proof, namely, who else is in on this? Like, who you already got, who you already attracted that, and they're like, oh, I got Jeff Bezos on. Oh, okay, well, he doesn't just mention his name. What would you advise someone, because I've heard this a lot, I've got this really great idea, yes, it's got that potential, I've got a lot of interest, and everyone's telling me, I will, as soon as you have that first investor, that first one who's put their money in, and I see who they are, but it's like a catch-22 of, I haven't got that guy or gal first, so everyone else is waiting for that one to respond. Do you have any strategy that might help someone in that situation?
So I'll take that. It's incredibly important and incredibly helpful to get somebody involved who's put money in early on. It doesn't have to be a lot of money, and so maybe making it attractive, an easier sell to that main person. That somebody who knows about this particular device or is a big name in medical devices, getting them in, even giving them common stock, try to make their yes easier.
I think it's really helpful to have an industry insider who people can see the link, the reputation alongside your deal. For example, Respiratory, which is an active implantable device for heart failure patients. I recruited Bobby Griffin, who used to be president of the pacemaker businesses at Medtronic, as an angel investor. He put in a diminished amount of money for himself, maybe $100,000. But boy, that led a lot of credibility when I went to DC. Say, oh, Bobby Griffin's in the deal. With Mainstay, it's an active implantable neurostim device for low back pain. I invited Andy Weiss to join the board. Andy used to run the neurostim business for Medtronic, so that led credibility to the project. And I'm not just using it for window dressing, and really helpful and offer a lot of
together and your documents, but is there a way to get in? I'll just leave it there.
Yeah, no, that's the number 2 question I get all the time. So I would say this is 101, but it still happens all the time, is just never, ever do the cold call or email something in without some sort of intro, because it just is a waste of an email and is a net negative. That may sound obvious, but people still do it, and it's always a bad thing, always a waste of time. So always get an intro. In 10 years at Fraser, through that time, we're seeing 80 deals get done. I don't think there was one that wasn't from a close referral. So referrals are really important. Best is another investor that's doing the deal, and but that assumes you've got another VC coming in. If that's not the case, then look at their advisors. They put all that on the internet. So look through who are advisors to the firm. Connect with those people. Get someone who's going to give a warm and valuable introduction. Don't bother asking another VC who's just passed for an intro. For obvious reasons, but still that happens a lot, and it's of no value.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I you didn't see any value in this idea, but do you know anyone who might see value in this idea?
Yeah. No, it's common. Surprisingly, it's common. And it's an obvious question, and I understand, but it's just it doesn't bring any value. So I think it's the warm introductions from if it's an entrepreneur, probably the best would be an entrepreneur that has made money for the firm. So this deal just had a 10x exit. The CEO of that company is by default going to be loved by the partners in that venture capital firm, and a warm introduction there is the best. But you can imagine the list of others. So,
and they ask, is there a way for someone to find out who are all the ones that you presently or back in the past, and find out the history and do that over?
Yeah, I think the easy way is most firms on their website in addition to their partners, they'll publish advisors, venture partners, operating partners, whoever. And we all have LinkedIn, so work it out from there. I think there's an assumption that on the VC side that the entrepreneur is going to be able to do an effective job and get that intro smoothly and in what looks like a seamless fashion, and that if it's not happening that way, that's kind of a bad sign, because we just assume that every deal we do is in some way going to be through a relationship that already exists in the firm. So, and I think we find 100% VCs like that.
I would also be very deliberate about who you want to get to within a VC firm. So if you're asking for an introduction and say, do you know Bobby Smith at this fund? Don't just ask for an introduction to the fund. And then how you pick up who you want to go to within the fund. You look at the deals they've done. If they have experience in your therapeutic area, they'll probably get your story. If they make money in your area, they might be more receptive to your story. Look at where they are in their careers. If they're the older guy that raised the fund 10 years ago and he's kind of floating on the work of the younger guys, may not be as hungry. Maybe you want to go after the principal level person who's been there for a few years and wants to make a name for himself at the firm. He's going to be hungry to do a deal. And you also look at how many deals they've done. If they've already done 2 deals in a year, my guess is it's less likely that they're going to be eager to do another one. They don't do more than 2 or 3 deals in any 1 year. So, yeah, be very direct about who you want to access within that fund.
About your personal experience approaching VCs, what did you find to be most effective?
So, what I found, and this goes for a lot of startup worlds, there's no elegant way of doing it. There's no systematic way. Taking into account what the panel here has said, you just have to go and iterate and try everybody you talk to who is your attorney, or just try to get as many referrals as you can, and try to get it in that way. And it's not a one-time shot. You can try it, when you talk to your regulatory person and ask just keep trying and keep iterating through the process to get in. The other thing I would say is that when you see your investors for the first time, you have to be ready, and by that I mean do as much as you can for as little money as possible to get as far as you can. So if you can make your presentation look like you've spent a lot of money getting into animals and doing lots of IP work, just do as much as you can to show a presentation that looks like you're as far along. Because over time, you'd be surprised at how much you can actually get done with not a lot of money if you really try. And every question that comes up, you need to be able to knock out of the park, so you need to know the questions that you're going to ask in advance. So it's good to go to friendly people who know this stuff to get to ask you those tough questions in advance.
I'd like to ask now how you would approach angel investors. But before I do, are there any questions in the audience specifically about VCs approaching them first with those, and perhaps a story you'd like to share with the group? Hey, Liz.
Hi, Jeff. So this is a question regarding the approach, but also the resume of the team, because I have friends that are investors, and they have some of them have got dry of, I don't take a team with a CEO has certain degrees or certain experience or lack of certain experience. So do you have in that approach also a quick assessment of who the entrepreneur has on their team, as well as what their credentials are or not that you undergo them?
I'm sorry, I had a hard time understanding you.
I think I understood the question to be how an investor would think about who should be in the team and who shouldn't be.
Right, as well as what the entrepreneur that is bringing the potential investment opportunity to you, what is that CEO's credentials or experience that makes you more favorable to that investment opportunity and less favorable?
Oh, sure, yeah. So, obviously, folks who've made money demonstrably before, of course, not everyone's done that. So, but that, don't underestimate how big a deal that is. Maybe it doesn't have to be the CEO, as Danny pointed out and Scott pointed out. Getting someone on the board who checks that box but isn't in an operating role is not as good, but it's still, from an investor perspective, that's very helpful and shows some validation. I think it would be a long discussion about who you'd like to see on the team, but I think showing that you've been thoughtful about how you're going to build the team and you're getting a good range of expertise, you're getting complementary expertise to yourself. If you as the entrepreneur are very technically oriented, that you've started to think about at least getting some advisors with sales and marketing phenotypes involved. Things like that I think are important. The problem is early on, obviously recognize that there's only so much you can do, and a lot of it's going to come down to the entrepreneur. So, I think the VC is going to look a lot at the entrepreneur and their passion, their smarts around this, and they're going to make it happen.
Next question, please introduce yourself.
My name is Don Conway. I'm from the Amos Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth College. And my question is to the panel. Could you think back on when you entered the industry and look at the evolving role that reimbursement, the importance that reimbursement has played up to today, and then what you see for the future in terms of the importance of reimbursement?
So I can take that. 20 years ago, we were looking for big markets and big ideas, in the sense and drug-living sense of the world, and we would assume that everything would get paid for somehow, and it did. And then 10 years ago, we really worried about regulatory, as the FDA is going to, how long they were going to take to get you approved, and now we concentrate fully on reimbursements and how things are going to get paid, and assuming, assume nothing, assume it's going to be a fight, and it's really come to be, I guess, in my experience recently, the top question that needs to be answered. If you answer all those other things in the past, people would say, investors I think would say, okay, well, this will be so good that people will pay for it. Now that's not the case. You have to assume a 5-year process of getting a new code with randomized clinical studies involved.
Hi, I'm Rajni Halami. I'm CEO of Council. As an entrepreneur, I'm looking at more the startup companies using the angel model and then bypassing the VCs and going straight to the public markets. Probably doing that.
So what are your thoughts about bypassing VCs and getting some angel funds and then going straight to the public market? Is that
I'll take a stab at it. I think I'll step back from the specific question just a little bit and say, in this environment, there's really no sort of default plan that everyone should be following. It strikes me that every deal getting funded and being successful has taken a different path. As we talked
get
about,
money where you can.
get money where you can. Thank you. Be creative. So sure, if you can get angel funding and take it public on London Exchange or something that funds your company, sure.
There were 4 more sources of funding I'd like to touch upon, so maybe if one of you want to volunteer for angel investors, how best to approach that audience? One of you want to take that?
The angel group is the least, it's the most amorphous, most difficult to approach in any systematic way, and so that is word of mouth. There's around here. There's a number of groups like Life Science Angels, North Bay Angels, I think, Silicon Valley Angels. So there are groups that you can go to that have regular presentation nights. So that's one way. But otherwise, in the specific angels who can actually write checks for investment, I think it's word of mouth. It's asking for referrals, but it's also looking at who's invested in other companies. You can approach people who have experience.
Thank you, Scott. Next is how best to approach strategic partners. Dan, you want to take that?
Sure. My advice is the strategists care about what their customers think. So you figure out who's a high-volume user for the J&J product, the electronic product, and you get to know them first. And it's not just a single meeting, it's building a rapport with them and get them excited about what you're doing. And then if they generally are excited about what you're doing, they're happy to tell this development guy or the president of the division, you need to own this, you need to know what these guys are doing.
Thank you. How about alternate sources of financing, such as non-dilutive monies, grants, etc.?
Yeah, I'll take that. I mean, in terms of being creative, so I won't focus so much on non-dilutive, but there is money around for that. I'm up in Seattle, and we have a life sciences development fund up there that's tobacco money that's being repurposed for funding early stage companies. It's not a lot, it's a couple $100,000, but it's made a huge difference to a number of early stage local startups, and those exist in different forms in different places. So networking, asking around, if they're doing their job, then they're known in the community, so asking around. They shouldn't be that hidden. I think alternatives, I'm spending a lot of time right now, as Joe said, I'm managing director with a fund in Australia looking at North American medtech. And we come with certain complexity, and it's more complex to raise money from overseas than from a group here. But in the spirit of everyone being creative, there's a lot of receptivity to that. There's funders from Canada, there's funders from Singapore, there's funders Europe, and Asia, of course. My observation as someone who I think I feel comfortable saying I'm fairly in the flow of what's going on and deals that are getting done, I'm still regularly surprised by the makeup of syndicates of new investors in new medtech deals. So it's hard to predict where the money's going to come from, and I think Scott said it best, it's persistence and looking under unusual rocks to find the money, because it's not the sort of default path of going down Sandhill Road these days. It's really finding money wherever.
So last I'll ask about relatively liquid online crowdfunding. Thoughts on that? Is that a viable way to, I know, be creative there when you can? What are your thoughts on crowdfunding?
I'm going to go try it. It's a good idea.
Okay. You want to endorse it, Scott? Any other thought?
I've never done that.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't either. I think it's a good idea for work for someone, right?
A show of hands, anyone in the room tried or presently using crowdfunding?
I have a question down here.
Suzanne, we have time for one.
My name is Joel Steinberg. I'm with Navigate Surgical Technologies. I wonder if you could speak to the notion of raising milestones. So, for example, we've raised funds at the point of doing a successful permanent surgery. On first path allowed, we're 6 weeks away from the medical device license in Canada. We found it to be, in theory it's great, it's less diluted, we see valuation jump, but there's the risk that you don't do what you say you're going to do, and don't hit your milestones. And I just wonder what your thoughts are. Do you take the money when it's there, or do you feel that this is a sane approach and has some merit?
You're asking if you should be reading a tranche financing, is that your question?
Yeah, the notion is to finance incrementally as you achieve milestones and see valuation increase accordingly.
I mean, in an ideal world, you raise all the money up front, right? But it's not an ideal world, and the VCs, if I was a VC investing, I want tranche financings also, because you show me the data before I have to put more money at risk. So I've taken 2 deals that are tranche financings, and we were nervous and we weren't going to hit the milestone. My only advice is make sure you have a cushion, because things go wrong you don't anticipate. And also check out the reputation of the VC, because that's a great opportunity for your investor to be opportunistic. If the VC may know that you're underfunded to hit your milestone, God forbid you don't hit it, that's an opportunity for them to come in and kind of renegotiate your deal.
Yeah, my comment on that was going to be similar to Danny's of the check out, the group you're dealing with. Do they understand the zigs and zags of medical device development, and how are they going to react if and when you miss a milestone, and milestones get missed sometimes, and how they're going to behave? Are they going to head for the hills, or are they going to work with you? I think that's very important, because it's common.
Or are they going to crush you?
Or they're going to crush you.
We will take a break in about an hour's time, and have some time in the lobby. Will each of you be here in an hour's time? Great, so you guys are in the lobby at 10:20. Let's hear it for these gentlemen. Trevor.